Okay, great. So you've made it this far. You found the second video. Now, it's a quick reminder. What we're trying to figure out is what really happened when the Japanese invaded the Chinese city of Nanjing. Now, if you have no idea what's going on, if you just clicked on the second video because you thought this was going to be the chapter reading, stop, pause the video, go back. Look at the first video. It's 6 minutes long. It'll take you less than 10 minutes to go through it. It'll give you the full context of what is happening, or else you're going to be very, very confused. Now, the rest of you who have done the lesson launch, you found the second video where we're going to be doing the document analysis. Let's go ahead and get started. And to get started, let's actually start off with the game, okay? Now, with this game, our task is going to be to try to figure out, it's going to be a guessing game, which of these two textbook accounts are Chinese and which one of these two is the Japanese version of what happened. Now, why is this important? I think it's important because it's going to help us understand why there's still this debate, right? Like why people are still not sure what happened, why we're doing this as high schoolers, why we're having to try to figure out what really happened, okay? So I'll give you a few moments. Look over textbook A. Remember, as you're reading, you're trying to look for clues that'll tell you whether this is either A, Japanese textbook, or B, the Chinese textbook. Take a few moments, read over textbook A. Those of you who need it read out loud, textbook A. August of 1937, 2 Japanese soldiers, one an officer, were shot to death in Shanghai, the hub of foreign interests. After this incident, the hostilities between Japan and China escalated. So who started the fight here, according to this textbook? Japanese military officials thought Chiang Kai-shek, who's the leader of part of China, would surrender if they captured Nanjing, the nationalist capital. They occupied that city in December, but Chiang Kai-shek had moved his capital to the remote city of Chongqing. The conflict continued. So nothing in here about atrocities, nothing in here about war crimes, but look at this little asterisk, little note. What does the note say? Note, at this time, many Chinese soldiers and civilians were killed or wounded by Japanese troops, also known as the Nanjing incident. Documentary evidence has raised doubts about the actual number of victims claimed by the incident. The debate continues even today. Take a few moments, based on any clues that you saw, take a guess on the right whether you think this is either the Japanese textbook or the Chinese textbook. So you've seen by now this is the Japanese textbook, right? Clues include the fact that they are not recognizing that there are atrocities. In fact, they're being questioned. They're questioning it. They're saying, look, there's a debate. We don't actually know what happened, but we know maybe something bad happened, but it's a debate. Well, let's look at textbook B. How do we know this is going to be the Chinese textbook? So let's take a look at it. Textbook B. The Nanjing Massacre. Already right there's a huge difference. The Japanese textbook is calling it the Nanjing incident. Incident makes it sound like a mistake. Massacre makes it sound like a bloodbath. The Nanjing Massacre. December 1937, the Japanese military captured Nanjing. The Japanese military committed bloody atrocities against the residents of Nanjing and prisoners of war, killing them in extremely cruel methods, including, now they're going to tell us what the Japanese did, or what they say the Japanese did, including mass executions, burning, burying alive, beheading, biting by dogs. The Nanjing Massacre was the most horrible event in world history. According to statistics, the estimate of the deaths caused by Japanese atrocities against unarmed Nanjing residents and Chinese soldiers amounted to more than 300,000 just during the 6 weeks of the occupation by the Japanese military. The Nanjing Massacre is one of the greatest acts of violence perpetrated by the Japanese aggressors on the Chinese people. It's really heavy, very different from what the Japanese textbook was saying. Japanese textbook barely mentions that there were any atrocities taking place. The Chinese textbook goes into detail about what happened. They even make the claim that 300,000 people were killed by the Japanese. Take a few moments on the right. I want you to think. Which of these sources do you think you can trust the most? At this point, what do you think happened? B, I want you to think, well, what other source can we go to? If we want to really figure out what happened, if we really want to understand that central historical thinking question, what happened when the Japanese invaded Nanjing, what other source could we turn to? Take a few moments to answer that on the right. All right. Let's take a look at document C now. Now, for the second question, some of you may have said, what we want to really hear from is maybe an eyewitness, maybe someone who was there. Maybe we want to hear from additional Chinese or additional Japanese sources, maybe a Japanese soldier or a Japanese officer. Some of you may have said, we'll look at a historian. Well, that's what we're getting for document C. Now, for document C, before we read, take a few moments to source this document. I want you to tell me, what type of document is this? What is the purpose of this type of document? And do you think this document is going to be reliable? Why or why not? Sourcing, just for clues, you'll find the evidence or that information here and up here. So take a few moments to answer those two questions before we even dive into the text. All right. So some of you may have figured out this is from a historian named Jonathan Spence. Now, this historian worked at or wrote this while he was at Yale University, an extremely prestigious, reliable, trustworthy university here in the United States. Now, he is a historian of modern China. Is he Chinese? Is he Japanese? No, but maybe that's going to be part of what makes this document beneficial. What is his objective, first of all? Like, why is he writing about the history of China? Well, he's a historian. He wants to really figure out what happened. He's not looking at, he's not trying to advance one narrative. He's not trying to say the Chinese are right. He's not trying to say the Japanese are right. He's trying to figure out what actually happened. He may disagree with both of them in some ways. He may agree with both of them in some ways. But we know because he's trying to figure out the truth, maybe we can trust his document a little bit more. So let's take a look. What does Jonathan Spence say happened? They're followed in Nanjing. Oh, and as we read, I want you thinking, before I dive in, I want you thinking, in what ways is this similar to or different from the Japanese textbook? And in what ways is this similar to or different from the Chinese textbook? So let's jump in. There followed in Nanjing a period of terror and destruction that must rank among the worst in the history of modern warfare. For almost 7 weeks, the Japanese troops, who first entered the city on December 13th, unleashed on the defeated Chinese troops and on the helpless Chinese civilian population a storm of violence and cruelty that has few parallels. The female rape victims, many of whom died after repeated assaults, were estimated by foreign observers living in Nanjing at 20,000. The fugitive soldiers killed were estimated at 30,000, murdered civilians at 12,000. Other contemporary Chinese estimates were as much as 10 times higher, 300,000, and it is difficult to establish exact figures. Certainly, robbery, wanton destruction, and arson left much of the city in ruins, and piles of dead bodies were observable in countless locations. That's a lot. Now, if we were in physical class, this is a part of the presentation where I'd pull up images of what Jonathan Spence is writing about. Obviously not anything too graphic, but it would give you a sense. It is the sort of imagery that you would expect to see from the Nazis, right? People are very surprised. My students are always very surprised when they see that Japan was also committing terrible things in Asia and the Pacific. So now let's figure out in what ways is what Jonathan Spence is saying. Try to think of 2 or 3 ways that what he's saying is either supporting or going against the Japanese textbook, and 2 or 3 ways that he is either supporting or going against the Chinese textbook. Take a few moments to do that over on the right. All right, so here we are at the end. You've looked at 3 documents, 3 accounts of what happened. Now it's your job as historians, students of history, try to figure out, looking at the evidence that's been presented to you, what do you think happened when the Japanese invaded Nanjing? What really happened during the Japanese invasion of Nanjing? In your response, I want you to do 3 things. Identify which sources you found to be most reliable, or which source you found to be most reliable, and explain why. I want you to make a claim about what really happened in Nanjing. And I want you to defend that claim, citing at least 2 pieces of evidence from the documents. So basically, it's kind of what we were working on before we went on the lockdown, where you'll have the CER paragraph, but I'm adding the sourcing at the beginning. This is an important historical skill. You're going to have to do this in US history as well. If you get stuck, I'm going to add sentence frames to the right, where you can write out your response, but I also don't want you to stop. If you get stuck, I don't want you to just skip this. I want you to either email me, or I want you to come into some of my office hours. I mean, you have been doing a really good job of that. I want to see more of you take advantage of that. Otherwise, if anything else comes up, you all have my email, imaduena@laalliance.org. I look forward to seeing some of your responses. And again, if anything comes up, please reach out to me. Please stay safe, and please stay healthy. Have a good afternoon.